Have you ever felt the air change when a feather floats past your face? That strange sensation that something is moving aimlessly, without control, just existing? It's almost hypnotic. You want to reach out and catch it, but something tells you to just observe, to let it happen. The opening scene of Forrest Gump is not merely poetic. It's a philosophical statement disguised as simplicity. A white feather dances in the wind, rising, falling, spinning without any predictable pattern. It passes cars, hurried people, the urban chaos of savannah. And then, as if it had found exactly what it was looking for, it lands at the feet of a man sitting on a bench, waiting for a bus that may never arrive. This man wears an immaculate white suit, dirty running shoes, and holds a box of chocolates in his lap as if it were a treasure. He smiles at strangers. He offers chocolates. And then he says, "Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get." I remember watching this movie for the first time as a child and thinking it was just a cute phrase, something your grandmother would embroider on a pillow. But as I grew up, as the world became more complicated, more anxious, more controlled, I understood. What is Forrest really saying? He's saying that control is an illusion, that all our anxiety about planning the perfect future, about having the right answers, about being smart enough to avoid mistakes, it's all just a comforting fantasy we tell ourselves. Forrest Gump is considered by many to be a film about a dumb man who gets lucky, a fortunate accident, a guy in the right place at the right time. But what if I told you it's exactly the opposite? That it's a film about how modern intelligence, all our sophistication, all our cynicism, has made us profoundly stupid. About how simplicity is the deepest wisdom we've lost along the way. Today we're going to sit on this bench with Forrest. We're going to hear the stories of a man who, according to all the metrics society values, shouldn't have achieved anything, but who lived more fully, loved more deeply, and impacted more lives than any genius around him. We're going to understand why, in a broken world that values cleverness above all else, being simple can be the most revolutionary thing you can do. Because Forrest isn't telling a story. He's teaching lessons. Lessons about loyalty, about love, about action, about innocence, about persistence. And these lessons will destroy, piece by piece, everything you think you know about success, love, and purpose. So grab your chocolate, sit down, and prepare to discover that maybe, just maybe, you've spent your whole life being clever in the wrong way. My mother always said that you can learn a lot about a person by the shoes they wear. Where they go, where they've been, where they're going. Forrest Gump wears worn-out sneakers. He runs. He always runs. But before running, he walks. And before walking, before anything else, he meets Bubba. Bubba Blue is Forrest's best friend in Vietnam, a man obsessed with shrimp in an almost comical way. "Shrimp is seafood," he says with that thick southern accent. And he spends hours, days, weeks, listing all the possible ways to prepare shrimp. Fried shrimp, grilled shrimp, breaded shrimp, stir-fried shrimp, shrimp sandwich, shrimp burger, shrimp stew. It's almost maddening. But for Bubba, it's not a list. It's a dream. A crystal-clear, simple dream of owning a shrimp fishing boat after the war. He and Forrest would be partners, captains, masters of their own destiny. And then Bubba dies. He dies in Forrest's arms, in a smoky jungle on the other side of the world. Chasing a war neither of them understands, fighting for reasons no politician can properly explain. His last words are about going home, about shrimp fishing, And Forrest, holding his friend's body while helicopters roar overhead, makes a promise. If he survives, if he gets home, he'll buy that boat. He'll shrimp fish. He'll make Bubba's dream come true, even if Bubba isn't there to see it. Now, here's the part most people miss. The detail that changes everything. Forrest doesn't do this for money. He's not trying to be an entrepreneur. He didn't watch a TEDx talk about turning passion into profit. He didn't read a self-help book about a success mindset. He simply made a promise. And for Forrest, a promise isn't conditional. It's not something you hold on to if it works out, or if it makes financial sense, or if I'm still inspired 6 months from now. For Forrest, a promise is a law of nature, like gravity, like the tide. You don't question it, you just keep it. He buys the boat with the money he earned, playing ping pong for the army. He names it Jenny, because everything in his life eventually comes back to her. And at first, he catches absolutely nothing. 0 shrimp. The nets come back empty, day after day. The other fishermen laugh at him. They call it the idiot boat. The business doesn't work. Any sensible person would have given up, cut their losses, and pivoted to something else. But Forrest continues. Every day before sunrise, he goes out to sea, because he promised. Not to investors, not to a bank, to a dead friend whom no one but him remembers. And then comes Hurricane Carmen, the storm that destroys all the other boats in the region, that decimates the entire Bayou La Batterie fleet. All the boats, except his. Because Forrest, in his stupidity, was so far out at sea chasing shrimp that the storm hit him differently. And suddenly, literally overnight, he's the only shrimp fisherman operating in the region. He becomes a millionaire. Bubba Gump Shrimp Company becomes an empire. But here's the crucial point. He didn't get rich because he was smart. Not because he had a visionary business plan. Not because he networked or used the right strategies. He got rich because he was loyal to a promise made to a dead friend when nobody was looking, when there was no rational reason to continue. This is Forrest's first great lesson, and it goes against everything modern culture preaches. Success isn't about being the smartest. It's about being the most loyal. In a culture obsessed with innovation, with pivoting quickly, with abandoning what doesn't work at the first sign of resistance, with testing and optimizing and maximizing, Forrest reminds us of something radical and almost forgotten. Sometimes, the greatest act of wisdom is simply not giving up. Even when it seems foolish, especially when it seems foolish. Because success, true success that means something, isn't a goal you pursue. It's a byproduct of loyalty. It's what happens when you're loyal to something bigger than yourself. And that changes absolutely everything. Because it means you don't need to be a genius to have an extraordinary life. You don't need to have all the answers or the right IQ or the perfect strategy. You just need to be a person who keeps their promises day after day, even when the whole world says you're being stupid, even when there's no audience, even when it doesn't make sense. Bubba isn't there to see the empire. But the empire exists because Forrest refused to forget. And maybe that's it. Maybe the most important legacy we leave behind isn't what we conquer, but the promises we keep when nobody else cares. Jenny and I were like peas and carrots. No, Forrest, you weren't. You never were. But you believed it with every fiber of your being, and perhaps that's exactly what hurts the most to watch. Jenny Curran is the first person to let Forrest sit next to her on the school bus. All the other boys ignore him, laugh at him, point at his legs with their metal braces. But Jenny, that little girl in the torn dress, looks at him and says 5 words that will change his life forever. You can sit here if you want. And in that moment, in that simple gesture of childlike kindness in a cruel world, Forrest Gump falls in love. And he never, not for a second in the next 40 years, stops loving. But Jenny is broken in ways that Forrest, with all his pure heart, can't understand. Abused by her drunken father in a house that reeks of despair. Ashamed of the extreme poverty that forces her to wear tattered clothes. Carrying a toxic shame that seeps into every decision she makes. And throughout her life, while Forrest achieves everything without realizing it, unintentionally, Jenny desperately searches for something, anything, that will make her feel alive, that will make her feel worthy. She joins the hippie movement. She uses increasingly harder drugs. She gets involved with men who treat her like trash, who use her, who beat her. She dreams of being a famous singer, but ends up singing naked in dirty strip clubs while men throw money at her. And every time Forrest appears in her life, every time he offers her security, unconditional love, a stable life in a beautiful house, marriage, family, she runs away. She runs as if she were fleeing from the devil. You don't know what love is, Forrest. But he knows. My God, he knows. He knows in a way she'll never understand. Because Forrest's love isn't based on getting something in return. It's not transactional. It's not conditional on her behavior. He loves her the way he keeps promises, like a law of nature, like something that simply is, independent of reciprocity or logic. And that's what makes it all so devastatingly painful. Because here's the truth no one wants to face. The truth that tears pieces away from you. You can't save the people you love. No matter how hard you try, no matter how pure, how unconditional, how persistent your love is. Some people are fighting battles you can't fight for them. Demons you can't exorcise. Wounds you can't heal, no matter how many bandages you offer. Jenny represents something bigger than herself. She is the collective shadow of America. The broken soul of an entire generation that grew up amidst domestic violence, the Vietnam War, post-Kennedy disillusionment, the collapse of all the bright promises of the 1950s. She is all the unfulfilled promises of the American dream. And Forrest, the innocent fool, is forced to watch, powerless as the person he loves most in the universe slowly and painfully self-destructs, while he can do absolutely nothing but stand there. There's a scene in the film that destroys me every time. Jenny returns to her childhood home, that dilapidated house where her father abused her, and she starts throwing stones at the house. First slowly, then furiously, screaming, crying, until she collapses to the ground, sobbing like a child. And Forrest, who witnesses everything, says something profoundly philosophical. Sometimes I think there isn't enough destiny for everyone. Other times I think it's all just chance, or maybe it's both happening at the same time. This is the unbearable tension. The pain of loving someone broken is that you never know what could have been different. You never know if it was fate or chance. If you should have done more, fought harder, insisted more. Or if there was never anything that could have been done. If the ending was written from the beginning. And Forrest carries that. He carries that pain for decades without ever becoming bitter. Without ever blaming Jenny. Without ever hating her for not being able to accept his love. Without ever giving up on her, even when everyone says he should. And that capacity to love without possessing, to give without demanding, to be present without trying to control or fix. That's the kind of emotional strength that only fools have. Why the clever ones? The clever ones protect their hearts. They make lists of pros and cons before getting involved. They establish healthy boundaries. They know when it's time to move on. And they completely miss the point of what it means to truly love someone. Jenny dies, of course, from a mysterious illness that the film doesn't name, but that we all know what it is. AIDS, the plague of the 80s. But before that, she returns to Forrest. Thin, sick, but finally at peace. And she says she always loved him, and Forrest believes her. Because for Forrest, the story was never about being loved back. It was about loving, period. It was about being the only constant light in her darkness. This is the second lesson, and it hurts. The pain of loving someone broken is not a weakness. It's not something you should have avoided because you were smarter. It's proof that you're still human in a world that teaches you to be strategic with your feelings, to invest emotions only where there's a guaranteed return. Forrest teaches us that love is not an investment. It's an act of faith. And sometimes, the person you love will break you 1,000 times. And you'll still keep loving them anyway. Not because it's stupid, but because that's what it means to be truly human. That day, for no reason at all, I decided to run away. There is no moment more emblematic, more iconic, more profoundly philosophical in Forrest Gump than when he simply starts running for no reason, no destination, no goal, no plan. Jenny just left again, disappearing in the early hours of the morning after they finally spent the night together. Her mother died a few months ago. He has enough money to never work a day in his life, but he doesn't know what to do with it. He has success, recognition, everything society says should make you happy. But he feels nothing. He's empty, lost. And then, in a moment of pure, inexplicable impulse, he gets up from the rocking chair, walks to the end of the driveway, and starts running. And he doesn't stop. He runs from the west coast to the east coast, 3,000 miles. Then he turns around and comes back. Then he crosses the country again in the opposite direction, and again and again. For 3 years, 2 months, 14 days, and 16 hours, Forrest Gump simply runs. He grows a beard. His hair grows long. His sneakers wear out and he gets new ones. And he keeps running. People start to notice. Reporters follow him. They think he's making a political statement, that he's protesting against the war or against the government, or in favor of something, that he's found some profound meaning, some noble cause. They create t-shirts with his face on them. They form a movement. Runners from all over the country follow him, creating a caravan of seekers waiting for wisdom. And Forrest? Forrest is just running. "Why are you doing this?" a breathless reporter asks, microphone in hand. All I felt like doing was running. This drives people crazy, because we live in a culture where absolutely everything needs a reason. Every behavior needs to be justified, rationalized, optimized for a result. You can't just do something because you can. You need to have SMART goals, metrics, KPIs, a greater purpose, an inspiring reason that you can post on Instagram. But Forrest shows us something that modern psychology is only beginning to understand, something that ancient practices knew intuitively. Sometimes, pure action is the cure, not reflection, not talk therapy, not journaling, not strategic planning, not sitting and processing your feelings, just movement. When you're processing grief, trauma, existential confusion, loss, the worst thing you can often do is stand still, thinking. The rational mind doesn't have the tools to process irrational emotions. It's like trying to cut water with a knife. The more you think about your pain, the more trapped you become in it. The more it feeds on itself. The more it creates narratives that lead nowhere. But the body? The body understands in a way the mind never will. Putting one foot in front of the other, breathing deeply, sweating, feeling your muscles burn, feeling your heart beat. That's meditation in motion. It's a way of praying without words. It's how you process things that have no name, no logic. Forrest doesn't run because he's found meaning. He runs until the meaning dissolves, until the need for meaning disappears, until the pain becomes just a physical sensation, something that can be endured step by step. Until the chattering mind, that endless voice that wants to understand everything, finally falls silent, lets the body do the work. And then, one day, in the middle of the Arizona desert, surrounded by dozens of hopeful followers, he simply stops. I'm kinda tired. I think I'll go home now. The people who followed him are completely shocked, almost betrayed. And now? What do we do now? What did all this mean? And Forrest has no answer, because there never was an answer. He never promised wisdom. He never promised a movement. He never promised that his running meant anything beyond the act of running. He was just running. But here's what he learned. Something he never says aloud, but which is implied in every step. You don't need to understand your pain to overcome it. You don't need a 5-step master plan to move forward. You don't need closure or answers, or a pretty narrative that makes sense. Sometimes you just need to start moving and trust that your feet know the way better than your head ever will. This is the third lesson, and it is radical in its simplicity. Action without reason is not madness. It is bodily wisdom. It is what you do when words fail and thought becomes a prison. It is how you survive when life breaks you in ways that cannot be explained or resolved, only lived. In a world obsessed with finding your purpose, Forrest reminds us that sometimes purpose isn't something you find through deep reflection. It's something you live, one step at a time, even without knowing where you're going. And when you finally stop, you discover you don't need to know why you started. The movement itself was the cure. My mother always said, "Only a fool would do foolish things." Forrest Gump lives through some of the most violent and divisive moments in American history. Racial segregation, the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, political assassinations, and in each of these events, he is there. Not as an observer, but as a participant. But there's something extraordinary. Forrest never learns to hate. When he's at the University of Alabama, he witnesses desegregation. He sees Governor George Wallace block the entrance to black students. And what does Forrest do? He picks up a notebook a student dropped and returns it to her. Because to him, she's not a political symbol. She's just a person who dropped a notebook. In Vietnam, he serves alongside black men, white men, men from everywhere. And for him, there is no difference. Bubba is not a black soldier. Bubba is Bubba. Lieutenant Dan is not a traumatized white officer. He is Lieutenant Dan. This inability to categorize people into ideological boxes is not ignorance. It is freedom. Because here's the hard truth. Modern intelligence has taught us to be tribal. It has taught us to divide the world into us and them, to create narratives about who deserves empathy and who doesn't. And we call this social consciousness, critical thinking. But Forrest shows us what we lose in this process: the ability to see people as people. He doesn't understand why someone would hate another person because of their skin color. Not because he's too stupid to understand racism, but because the very logic of hatred doesn't make sense to him. And perhaps that's exactly it. Perhaps hatred only makes sense when you're clever enough to construct elaborate justifications for it. There is a radical innocence in refusing to learn cynicism, in refusing to adopt the cultural poison that everyone around you is drinking. And this innocence is not passivity. Forrest fights in the war. He saves lives. He acts. But he never lets violence transform his soul. When Lieutenant Dan loses his legs and curses God, curses Forrest, curses the whole world, Forrest simply remains his friend. He doesn't try to fix Dan. He doesn't offer empty words of comfort. He's just there. He takes Dan's shrimp fishing. He lets Dan scream, drink, self-destruct, and remains the only constant in his life. And eventually, Dan finds peace. Not because Forrest said the right words or went to the right therapy, but because Forrest never gave up. Because the constant presence of someone who rejects hatred is more powerful than 1,000 logical arguments. This is the fourth lesson. Innocence is not naivete. It is the refusal to let the world teach you to hate. And in an age of constant anger, ideological division, and endless culture wars, this refusal is a revolutionary act. Because you may be smart enough to justify your anger, but it takes courage to remain kind. I don't know if everyone has a destiny, or if we're just floating around aimlessly like a breeze. But I think maybe it's both. Forrest Gump is incredibly lucky, or at least that's how it seems. He meets Elvis Presley and accidentally inspires his hip movements. He teaches John Lennon how to sing Imagine. He discovers the Watergate scandal unintentionally. He invests in some fruit company and becomes a millionaire. It was Apple. All of this happens as if the universe were conspiring in his favor. But wait, let's look again. Forrest only knows Elvis because his mother rents rooms in their house. He teaches Lennon because he was interviewed on TV after returning from the war. He discovers Watergate because he was in the hotel where it happened. He invests in Apple because Lieutenant Dan managed his money. In each case, Forrest's luck is preceded by something that is not luck. He was present. He was doing something. He was in the game. That's the part people miss. They see the magical moments, but they don't see Forrest's 1,000 hours simply unfolding day after day, without glamour, without recognition. He didn't plan on meeting famous people, but he was open to it. He didn't plan on getting rich, but he trusted Dan and invested. He didn't plan on changing history, but he was there, doing the simple, boring work that nobody else wanted to do. Modern culture has sold us a lie, that success is about having the right plan, the right strategy, the right timing, that it's about being smart enough to hack the system. But Forrest proves something different, that most of what we call luck is just persistence in disguise. It's about showing up every day, even when nothing is working. It's about saying yes to opportunities that seem stupid on the surface. It's about not being ashamed to try things that smart people would avoid for fear of looking foolish. There's a small, almost forgotten scene where Forrest is fishing for shrimp alone in the middle of a storm. The rain is pouring down, the sea is raging, and he simply keeps going. No drama, no complaining, just doing the job. Nobody is watching, nobody is applauding. There are no cameras, no audience. It's just one man and a promise. And it is precisely in these moments in these invisible moments of pure persistence, that luck is built. This is the fifth lesson. Chance and destiny are not opposites. They are partners. The universe can give you opportunities, but you need to be present to seize them. And the only way to be present is to not give up, even when everything seems meaningless. Fortune favors the persistent, not the intelligent. So here we are, back at the bank. The feather has flown away. The bus has finally arrived. And Forrest is going home to take care of his son with Jenny, a boy who carries her name and the hope of a future she will never see. Is he clever, Mrs. Gump? Is he normal? And Forrest just smiles, because he knows something that takes us the entire movie to understand. There is no such thing as normal. There is only being alive, being present, being willing to love even when it hurts. Forrest Gump isn't a story about a lucky fool. It's a story about how true wisdom doesn't come from IQ, degrees, or elaborate strategies. It comes from 5 simple things. Keep your promises, even when no one is watching. Love unconditionally, even when it's not reciprocated. Act when you don't know what to do. Refuse to learn hatred, no matter what the world teaches you. And show up every day, because persistence is the only real magic that exists. In a world that values cleverness above all else, Forrest reminds us that being simple isn't about being stupid. It's about being free. Free from expectations. Free from the need to impress. Free to simply be. And perhaps, just perhaps, the greatest wisdom of all is this: to stop trying to be extraordinary and simply be present. Because life isn't a box of chocolates that you need to understand. It's a box of chocolates that you need to savor, one piece at a time, without knowing what comes next. The feather flies off again, and you can try to predict where it will go, or you can simply watch in amazement as it dances. Forrest chose the second option, and he outlived any genius around him. Perhaps it's time for you to choose too.